Hello and welcome to Place by Mahmoud. And our today's guest is Shiggi Pakter. Sorry if I pronounce her name incorrectly. And she has traveled to various countries and she has a lot of connecting stories to share with us. So for our listeners who are unfamiliar with you, can you tell us a bit more about you?
Sure. So, just so everyone can hear the name, it's Shiggi Pakter, and it's not a usual name, which kind of helps with this part of just an introduction. I am Kenyan by birth, but Dutch by nationality, which is the two halves of my name. I grew up in Kenya up until the age of 15, and I've lived in the UK ever since then, from the age of 15 to now. So it's a long chunk of time. My background, growing up, I'm very hyperactive. I played a lot of sports, a lot of martial arts as a kid. And even when my parents sent me over to the UK for boarding school, I still carried on with martial arts and sports. Very musically inclined as well. I've played at least 10 musical instruments that come to mind right now. Probably there's more from the age of 6, and then other instruments at varying times as I grew up. And all of that's kind of accumulated to an interesting existence in the UK. So I studied at a university. One of the I'm not really keen on the word prestige, like a prestigious university. It's not like Oxford or Cambridge. I was at Brunel University, which tends to be somewhat celebrated in the world of engineering. If you've got a specific target of universities and their subjects. And I studied sound engineering there, but became a sound engineer rather than, kind of finish the degree. So I tried 3 different degrees across 2 different universities and didn't finish any of them because I lost interest in them, which is interesting. And from there, I worked through a various kind of spectrum of jobs. Ended up liking event management quite a lot, which involves security, so physical security as opposed to IT security. And that kind of reached a peak when I became a manager at the London 2012 Olympics. So the Olympics, like the Olympics, are quite a big thing, for people to watch around the world, and people don't really appreciate or see that there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes, and even to the point where in my section of the park, like not even the whole park, just my tiny little section, over a 16-hour shift, we were expecting at least 250,000 people to come through that section on its own. And I, along with a team of about 12 to 15 other managers, we were all managing this kind of space. So going from dropping out of university, still being a sound engineer, working in security, and kind of reaching a managerial point at the Olympics is one of my kind of highlights, life highlights, I suppose. And from that, I worked in a few startups as well, in varying roles, for various industries. My passions kind of ended up becoming job uh, ideas as well. So I love bouldering. I do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I'm a DJ as well. And from DJing, I actually DJed semi professionally. And with the startups, all the experiences from those businesses that, for whatever reason, either the financing failed or business characters kind of didn't work very well, which is a very common thing in startups where people's characters don't really work well, especially when you're founding partners. So from that, over the last 2 years, I've been starting my own business again, as a sound engineer. So the sound engineer skill I had at university, I created into a business which is AudioFi. So AudioFi is an audio content production house, uh, basically covering creating, editing, and producing audiobooks, podcasts, any kind of audio real estate, which I like to call, for corporate businesses. If they want to make their website searchable through audio, which is a very, it's not popular yet. It is happening. People are realizing the importance of it. And we also are currently experimenting a lot in the voice AI area of the world. Things like Clubhouse and all this social audio networks are kind of coming up. So we're really exploring all of that and just looking at how much leverage and longevity. Sorry, that's my elbow. Just how much distance that there is in voice AI and audio. Social audio media, which is an interesting concept. So yeah, that's a very kind of quick, squished overview of I suppose my professional life and my geographical life.
Yeah, that's really cool. And like it really is like your life is quite diverse as well as like very interesting for me, a lot of people, including me.
I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah. So like as you mentioned in the last, like how big do you think like audio is gonna be? Like let's say in
I
2030.
think Yeah, so we're in 2021 now, so like 9 years time. There's no doubt in my mind that audio is going to have a far more, I would never say central, because we are very visual creatures, right? So as much as we love our ears, our eyes kind of tend to take more precedence than our ears. But especially with the pandemic, that's kind of happening for some areas in the world. A lot of people who do work in the world of tech or use phones and screens, a lot of the time, I don't know about you, but I've been in lockdown in the UK, and I actually get screen fatigue now, because just staring at a screen for, as a sound engineer, I could easily look at a screen for 16 hours in a 24-hour period, which is a lot of time. But you just don't realize it happens until your eyes get really sticky and you're just like, I can't look at the screen. And then you start putting eye drops in just to keep on going. But my ears are just like, yeah, no, we can carry on. Um, so I think we've got smart speakers, right, that are out there. So I have one in the corner of my room. I'm not going to say her name, but it's the female version of Alex. Okay, cool. She didn't reply to that. Right. So if you just miss the A and she's good, like, okay, because she's super sensitive. Like in the past, I just like say, oh yeah, so I've got a Alex, and then she's just gonna goes, yes, how can I help you? I'm like, shh, no, I'm not talking to you. Um, but I think, yeah, smart speakers are kind of they're on the up, year by year. Like people are using them more and more. In our phones, they're embedded. So we've got, I don't know if my laptop. See, now I'm scared of saying names because I have all of these things at home. So we've got Siri. Okay, good. And then we've got Google, and you've got I think, what's the Microsoft one that everyone forgets about? Cortina, I think, is the Microsoft one.
Yeah,
Cortina,
yeah,
and then I have a Samsung. I should know this one. Bixby. All right, so those are all the voice assistants that exist now, right? And they're all, I think, Google's probably the most comprehensive one, just because the search engine that sits behind it is so dense. Like a lot can kind of come out of that. I think the Amazon speaker is the second probably most comprehensive one, because there's things called skill sets. I'm going to call them Alex skill sets, because if I say her whole name, she'll start going crazy. So this is interesting, right? Just as from a psychological point of view, I'm already being trained by technology. I just want people to observe what's happening. As someone who's kind of trying to understand voice AI, I'm already being trained, like how to, not I don't want to say upset them, but not to trigger them. It's like, if you have a child and you don't want to say the word chocolate because they'll go crazy, like, oh my God, I don't want the chocolate. Same thing. But I believe in 9 years, definitely there's going to be a foundation of audio that people will start to take for granted. There's children now who are, what, maybe 5 years old, who are learning to speak. And if there's smart speakers in their homes, they are going to learn the narrative of how to interact with a smart speaker. All right. And then from 5 years old to 14 years old, by the time that becomes normal, they're just going to just, you ask them a question they don't know, they're just going to ask their phone, or they're just going to ask their speaker at home. What's two times two? Or what's this? Or how's the weather? Or should I take my umbrella outside? And the thing will be yes, no, four, go collect your laundry. You know, it's going to be mad. So I think it's going to, older generations are going to be a little bit fearful of it. Younger generations are just going to think, yeah, this is normal.
Yeah, like change is fearful, like for everyone. For yeah, because uh, let's say for like the previous generation from ours, so they were fearful of the things that are available now or which are like common now. So like the
Yeah,
new things for the next generations, or less, will be fearful for us. Like what will happen with this? Like yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. I mean, you think, but like, having a phone, right, a smartphone that kind of just tells you all sorts of things. You look back, we're in 2021, even 2010, right? The concept of the things that we have now in 2010, like the comparison is night and day. And then you look at 2000, so 2000 to 2020, some people weren't even born in that span of time, like adults, full grown adults, who are now 20, that were only born in 2001. So the beginning of the 2000s, you're like, yeah, we had flip phones, and like the first iPhone only came out in,
2008.
yeah, 2007, 2008. So the first smartphone only came out in 2008. And now we've got smart earbuds that are truly wireless, that have no wires, and it's crazy. It's crazy.
Like I can just visualize like what would be the reaction of the people who are generations behind us.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I have a friend, like, because of the rock climbing, I have a very broad friendship space. So rock climbing and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so martial arts and sports. From that space, I have a very kind of broad spectrum of people I interact with. So people who are 16 who go rock climbing, and people who are 16 who do Brazilian jiu-jitsu and literally just strangle me because they're way quicker than I am. I'll talk about things from the mid 90s, because when I was your age, which is horrible, I can't believe I can say that, but like I can go, when I was your age, what we had this, like we watched this movie came out, right? So I was watching Demolition Man with Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone, which came out, I think, in 1993. And I posted a still image of it on one of my Instagram accounts, and one of the people I climb with are just like, what movie is that? And I'm just like, Demolition Man. He's like, oh, I've never seen it, I'll have to check it out. And it's like, no, what? Oh my god. No, like it's a classic, right? It's a B movie classic, like, especially Wesley Snipes. This was just before he became Blade, and they're just like, Blade. Oh yeah, yeah, I heard about that, and it's that's just movies. So like you say, 20 years from now, people, I don't know, we look at stuff like the iPhone will be something in a museum as a vintage thing. I actually think it is. I went to a museum, and the first iPhone was in the technology section as a, like, technological firsts. So you had like the flip phone, and then you had like a Sony Ericsson, and then you had like a Palm Pilot, right? Which was one of those flip open huge brick things, and you'd like have to type on it. And then there's like a BlackBerry phone as well, because that was like the first business phone. And then there was an iPhone, and you're just like, wow. So yeah, when everyone's got Neuralink in their head and they don't even need phones in 20 years time, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, like the most scariest part is for us is like having a Neuralink in our head. Like
Yeah.
yeah, that's a very big thing, and it's quite possible, right?
Yep, it is. It really is. I mean, Elon Musk is doing Elon Musk things, and for sure, like the Neuralink idea, the connecting the internet to your head, isn't an alien idea. Again, I'm referring to the 90s, because a lot of things that come out now in technology, they have actually existed in science fiction in one way or another in the past. So a lot of things that we have now I love Star Trek. And Star Trek: The Next Generation came out in the 90s, and they had a lot of things like, the kind of the way the iPhone works, with a touch screen and stuff. They had that then, and then almost a replication of that starts kind of coming out as an iPhone. So with the Neuralink idea, I know I'm referring to really old movies, and they're B movies just because I'm a geek and I love them. There was a movie in 1991 or maybe 1989 called Lawnmower Man, and Lawnmower Man basically is a film about the internet, like just as the internet started. They made a movie about like this guy. He gets obsessed with the internet, and he's on this big like body moving gyroscopic thing. So like he has to swing around at very high speed to mentally connect to the internet. So that's the kind of premise of the movie. But by the end of it, I'm going to spoil it just because, people forget about this. He eventually becomes the internet. So he leaves his physical body, and his brain, his soul, or, whatever concept you want to use, is now in the internet. And the only way he's on the internet is because all the phones ring. Because at the time, the internet was through phone modems, right? It wasn't like a smart box or anything or an Ethernet connection. Like you literally had to have a phone line. So that's what they did. And now we're looking at Neuralink, and I'm just like, this is the same. And they were talking about this in the 80s. So, yeah.
Yeah, like as that was a thing. So people are already predicting what's gonna happen, like through movies.
Mhm.
So as like let's say, I'm not gonna say Simpsons, like that predicted a lot of things, but other than that, so like people are always on like prediction mode, like they are predict this gonna happen, this gonna happen, and a lot of it comes true because uh, let's say the concept of flying cars, which is still on the working process,
Mm.
I guess in China, and right now, yeah. So this idea came in, I guess, in 90s, 19, I don't know which year, maybe 70s or something, but
20s.
like 20s. Oh my god.
Yeah. So again, film reference, some sci-fi. So basically the 1930s, when there's a specific art movement that kind of was going around. There's a movie called Metropolis, which has a lot of science fiction kind of robots and stuff in it. Hang on, Alexa, when did the movie Metropolis come out? No, that's the new one. So, see, again, I've been so conditioned. I just outsource questions. But no, the Metropolis that she's looking at is 2001. But there's a original one that came out, I think, in the 1930s, which had the concept of flying cars and robots in it.
Yeah, so it took around 100 years to actually come into in a good form, because like it's quite
Exactly.
clear, and it will take a more, I guess, I'm not sure how many years it will take to implement it.
Mm,
But this is gonna happen, like the robots are gonna come, the cars are gonna come, and it's quite obvious because like people are spending billions of dollars every single year, like way more than that, just to doing research on these specific topics, robots and cars.
exactly. Well, Elon Musk is already, so he's got his Tesla company, right? He's already looking towards, and so is Uber. And I think they're trialing it already in America. Is driverless cars. So, I think the Tesla, the trucks, because the truck business out there, a lot of deaths happen due to truck drivers getting tired. They're trying to do more miles in like squeezing them into the hours that they should be sleeping, just to kind of get paid better. So rather than have increased deaths, they're just like, well, let's just see if we can automate trucks. Right? So no humans behind this however many tonned vehicle just driving through main roads around the world. That's the step. That's the next step. Is just like, how do we get rid of humans from these vehicles, and then maybe like not having humans by inside these vehicles. Now they can look at levitation. Um, I reckon they might start, if they go this way, they might start expanding towards things like the monorail in, I think, Japan. So they have the magnetic train. All right, so which like the train is just suspended, like you have this metal kind of like track, and then the train is just suspended on top of it. And I think they reverse the polarity, so you've got the north south going in an opposite direction that forces the vehicle to move in one direction, and it goes ridiculous speeds. Um, so yeah, if they put that on the road without humans driving it, then you basically have levitating cars. It's not true levitating cars, but they're not touching the floor. So
uh, yeah, it's somewhat levitating.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this will actually like for building this infrastructure in a lot of countries, this will take a bit time, uh,
Mm,
but this idea like the cars will come way before then all the infrastructure is built.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
they definitely will.
yeah, surely. So one thing that you said, like you changed career, like you actually studied in three different universities. So like
Hmm.
you studied in three different universities in three topics.
So
Yeah.
I studied across. So I studied three different topics across two different universities.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
so yeah. Sorry if I misunderstood. Anyway, uh,
it's okay.
yeah. So what were the topics like?
So the first one, from college to university, having to do my A levels and stuff, was creative music and technology. And I didn't realize it was more creative music than the technology because I studied music technology at A levels and I enjoyed it. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should carry on doing this at university. So that was the first one I did. But then I became a sound engineer at the university's nightclub, basically. And I'm like, well, I can do more from this job. I have more access to the university as a sound engineer, working as a sound engineer, than I do on this course because it's more music than it is technology. Like the course itself wasn't even in the engineering department, it was in the music department. And I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. And they had in the engineering department because I made friends with other people in other subjects, and they're like, oh god, we've got this amazing studio, this music sound studio, like in the engineering department, and they've got this new chamber, they've got an anechoic chamber. Do you want to go check it out? And I'm just like, why do you, a mechanical engineer, have access to a sound studio when me, a sound engineer, doesn't have a sound studio? Like, these are not making sense. And it was crazy. And I even asked the director of my course, I'm just like, why is there no funding for this? And, you know, I know it's engineering. I know it's an engineering university, so all the money is obviously going to go there. But why do they need a sound studio? And why is our subject not in the engineering department? And they're like, well, you're doing a Bachelor of Arts, which is music. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I left. That was it. Like, I'm like, I want access to the studio. So I moved on to another subject, which was multimedia technology and design. So basically, that covers graphic design, web design, music, but in a more technical kind of way, which was really weird. And yeah, a little bit of computer science. So it's kind of a broad um, media degree, and it was a Bachelor of Science as well. And because it was technically kind of a weirdly engineering thing, I moved to the engineering department, so I had access to the sound studio, and that's all I wanted. I just wanted access to that. But I was still working as a sound engineer, and that degree was okay. I mean, I wasn't particularly kind of moved by it. But then I worked at a company called Yellow Pages. In It was a 4-year degree, so in the third year, that's when I went and worked at Yellow Pages. And for people who are not old enough to know what or who Yellow Pages are, once upon a time, there used to be things called phone books, which were huge. Like literally, sometimes if you were too short to get something, you'd go find the phone book in the house, go put it on the floor, and it would be a step. Right, you could step up onto to something else. That's how big and thick these things were. And at a time, in these phone books, you would have little sections for companies where they would advertise their services and have little graphics on them. Like they wouldn't be complicated. You'd have your plumbers or your gardeners or whoever, like doctors, dentistries, and bakeries, whatever. So my job was as a graphic designer there, and that's what I did. I created those little graphics for those businesses. That was a job. But it would vary in size from like little to the whole page would be just one business if they paid enough money for it. And I hated that job, absolutely hated it. And I quit the degree at the same time. I'm just like, I'm done. I don't want any of this. All of this is rubbish. Just like, I don't know what I want to do at university, so I don't see why I'm paying money to be in a thing that I really have no interest in. So I took a break for a few months. And then for whatever reason, I went to Westminster, so the University of Westminster, to study architecture. Just because out of nowhere, I decided I'm going to study architecture because I like architecture. I like buildings. Buildings are fun. Um, and I actually really enjoyed architecture, but it's a very classic subject, if that, or a very traditional subject, right? So if you think of things that people have to go to university for, architecture is one of them. Like, you can't become an architect out of university. You have to go get your level 1, your level 2, do your professional level 3 exam, right? And then you're part of an architect firm. It's like lawyers. You can't, go just find someone who's a lawyer that studied it on Wikipedia. Like, that's dangerous, right? Doctors, you wouldn't let a doctor, do anything to you unless they've gone to university. And I think, the medical takes 12 years, I think, to become, a doctor, a fully licensed doctor. And yeah, so all of these classic things in architecture, to become an architect is one of them. I had 2 years there, really enjoyed it, but then realized I actually like myself and didn't want to spend 7 years just to become a junior architect. And then, unfortunately, in the UK, I haven't really seen any prolific black architects, because there's still, I don't want to call it racism, even though it is a little bit of racism, but it's more a case of uh, systematic prejudice is a phrase I'd prefer to use, where you have circles of people and they are like-minded and like-looking kind of people who just like that. They like what they're familiar with, and if I came in going, "Hey, I'm an architect," they're just like, "Yes, no." We're not going to let you kind of grow and flourish into a top level architect. You're going to struggle because you're female and you're black. So no, that's not a thing, which is an unfortunate thing to think about. But then I was just like, no, I can move elsewhere. So I did 2 years of architecture. I enjoyed it, but then at the same time, I just realized the projection, because it is good to kind of look forwards and look ahead and see yourself in the future. The projection wasn't right. So I thought, again, why am I wasting money on something that I'm not into? And that's when I quit. And I just thought, university right now is not for me. So I'm going to go do other things.
Okay, like that's like very courageous for you, because many people will just do anything to just complete the degree and have no idea what to do next.
Exactly. I do think the education system that we have and the education structure that seems to be a global thing. You're born, you do kindergarten, you do primary school, you do secondary school, you do college. Some people kind of drop out in college and then do whatever they need to do. Some people don't even get that far, actually. But those who do reach the level of university, it's like you're 18 years old. You've had a childhood where people are just holding on to you and saying, no, 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 don't go out and do things, like, we're going to protect you, and just do as you're told. And all of a sudden, everything does a 180 at 18. It's like, okay, off you go. And you're just like, but but we haven't discussed this, and you're telling me to go be an adult, and I'm like, you haven't prepared me for this. And it's just like, yeah, yeah, that's what university is for. That is not what university is for. People make mistakes at university because they don't know what they're doing. And they're doing a degree that they're like, oh, well, I was good at it at school, so maybe I'll be good at it at university. It's like, but is that what you want to do with your life? I don't know. No one's I haven't practiced this. So I was just like, okay, cool. Just do a degree that you hate and you will never use. But who am I to, challenge that. So yeah, it's questionable.
Yeah, like that's the common, like the most common phenomenon that's happening right now. And but a lot of people are like speaking about this right now because we need to change this. Like as
Hmm.
yeah, as like the people are as people are protesting against other things in the society. They're like not like not directly protesting, but standing against this. That this is not right. That
Yeah.
uh, we are just 18 and we're just out of high school and you have to just decide what to do in life.
Yep. Yep. It's not right. It's kind of nice again with the connectivity of technology, like us talking on Zoom right now, and that slowly but surely becoming more and more available around the world. It's breaking traditional um lines of education. There are still some places like in Kenya, where now kind of slowly but surely like there's space and abilities for people to do what they like, because once upon a time it would be a case of if your parents have enough money to send you to school, then you need to go into a job that will bring money back to the family. That was, and I still think in many many places that are not in the Western kind of culture of things or financially fluid, that is still very much the way the education system exists, right? It's just like if one of the family can be put out to get an education, then that means they can bring money back through a line of work that does bring money back. So that's why I don't know about you, but like African parents are just like, you become a lawyer, you become a doctor. Um, I'm pretty sure those are the only options you have. Like, or yeah, an accountant, right? So it's like finance, law, or medicine, right? Like those are the big three that they're interested in because they know those bring a lot of money back home, right? Um, I had pressures to that, but I think me saying, "Oh yeah, architecture looks interesting," they're like, "Oh, architects get money as well," and they left me alone. But still, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. For like I'm in Bangladesh right now, so like for me here, this is like not that bad. So um, like for people in Bangladesh, there are basically two things. One, like there are three options as well. So uh, one, you become a doctor. One, you become an engineer. Or three, you get kicked out. Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah, I forgot that option. That is the other option. You get kicked out because. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's like a bit mental pressure, but that's okay.
It is, and and it's understandable, but it's also kind of unfortunate that those are the restrictions. But I'm hopeful that, over time, as the Western world opens up the technology and in the wake of it, other places kind of have the ability to pick up technology and join in, just people having electricity, having a good connection, an internet connection, and then having a piece of technology that affords them the connectivity to the rest of the world. Like I'm pretty sure there's people out there, actually, I know there's people out there who are running micro businesses just off a smartphone, and that's when secondhand smartphones, so it's like, maybe iPhone 4s or whatever that are still running, they get sent to other places. People use these phones because they still have some kind of technological viability within the infrastructure of those spaces. And if they can connect to the internet, they can, I don't know, connect to Etsy, which is a shopping market for people who create independent stuff, or eBay or whatever. If they can sell things or at least kind of do a commerce type of thing in the e-commerce space, I think that's probably the biggest connecting factor for places that aren't quite on the technological side yet. The most accessible, I think, because if people are just like, I'm an artist, like in the middle of nowhere, people are going to be like, go do some farming. Like your art isn't bringing food in right now. Like nobody cares that you're creating these amazing pieces out of like, I don't know, whatever, just soil and different kind of grass stains. Like it for me, that would be amazing. I'd be like, oh my god, that's amazing. But the amount of work that person would need to do to be seen enough as an artist versus selling products or whatever is is still not. I could be completely wrong, but it's still not quite an option for spaces yet.
Yeah. So you say like it's not fair for them because everyone doesn't have equal opportunities because for different parts of the world. Because one
Yeah.
part, like on one side, like, I am not sure in Kenya, but in Bangladesh, like there are a lot of restrictions in terms of being creative,
Mm,
and like you have to like if you're in a lucky family where it's okay, then you can do it. But other than that, like it's very hard to like go beyond that. So like
exactly.
my grandfather, like I once said to my grandfather that um I want to study psychology. So like we were discussing, yeah, like that's what I said. And he was like, no, you don't. Why do you want to study psychology? Like like who should study that?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's not about tough. It's like why? What subject is this even a subject? No, like for him it's like it's not even a subject. Like you need to study engineering. You learn how to is like how computer works. And I mean like for him he's like around 80 now. So for him, uh this is like learning computer is same as like learning engineering. So he says like this. So he says like you have to learn engineering, that's what's working right now.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a cool perspective, you know.
it is. It is.
Anyway, so how do you describe like what's the perception about education and learning? Like what's right education and learning for you?
Um, so education and learning are two different things, and I'm glad that you say education and learning as opposed to education and or learning because they are not interchangeable. um, with education, I always look at education as creating foundation for people to kind of learn from, right? So as let's take the progression of classic education, right? So from the age of birth to about 15 or so, right, we're in very regimented spaces that have been designed to give us a very broad understanding of how the world works, right? So we can look at it from the school system, but I don't want to look at it from the school system just like as existing as a human being. Your environment and the people around you give you the opportunity to be educated. So when someone tells you something and tells you this is the way it works, like you're being educated in the way the society you exist in functions, right? So that's your education, where you're told, like, just to to kind of really explain this, you're told you have to wear clothes, okay? You have to wear shoes. You have to brush your teeth at least once a day, if not twice a day, okay? So you know what I'm saying, right? These very kind of like they're almost rules, right? They're like agreed rules that everyone around each other just agrees that's what happens. And when you're a baby and you're born, you are given these rules. Like we put those on the child. Because if a kid just was raised on their own, right, they would have instinctive ideas, but the kind of those things they wouldn't know. You'd have people just walking around naked because they're just like, yeah, this this is what are those? Those look horrible. I don't understand. Like, this is nice. Why are you doing that? So you have to, like, you get conditioned, right? So that's education. And then learning is you know kind of having things that aren't necessarily like the foundational kind of representation of what you need to live. Learning kind of adds on top of that. So that's when you start kind of building a house. And when you build the house of learning, you can either build it as the way people tell you how to build a house. So you do have your four walls and then you have a roof. and then the learning can kind of get a little bit more detailed, right? So, again, with school education versus family education, you get told you have to wear clothes, but I don't like wearing dresses. I like wearing trousers. You can't wear trousers because that's what boys wear. Why? Like, I want to wear trousers. Why are they only for boys? Boys have two legs and I have two legs. So what makes them more different and more special than me? So, that's where learning comes into play, because, you understand the foundation of clothes, but now there's this kind of this detail that now separates into left and right. But then, you get the conditioning, and then you see a guy in a skirt, and you're just like, boys aren't allowed to wear skirts. It's like, why do you say that? Oh, because I got told. What if you accepted that they could wear skirts? Then you're like, I don't know if I'm happy with that. So, like, that's the learning, right? So learning can change. Learning can kind of evolve depending on where you are, the space you're in, and again, the societal influences. So if I spoke Swahili in the heart of America, like, just, I don't know, some place that's super conservative, that are completely fearful of anything that is not like them, right? I'm trying to be politically correct here without kind of insulting anybody, but you go somewhere where your language is not understood and is almost feared, right? And you go in and you just start speaking, right? Your native tongue, and people are looking at you like, what are you doing? What even are you? Who are you? Like, speak our language or go away, right? So those kind of things. And then I'm sat here going, oh, okay, there's a problem here, because I don't know what you're saying and you don't know what I'm saying. So either, because I'm the minority, I'll just be like, okay, let me learn your language because I'm in your space, not the other way around. We're like, oh, you're foreign, let's learn your language. No. So yeah, so that's I mean, I could go into this into a hugely deeper level, but just based on opinion. But that's what I think the difference between education and learning is. Some people do sometimes say that they're interchangeable, and some people actually think education and learning, the way I've described this, is the other way around. But that's what makes discussion interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like it's subjective for them. Like what like everything is subjective. Because
Exactly.
yeah, the definition is gonna not it's not gonna match.
Yep.
What? How do you know like what's right for you and what's right for him? Right.
Yeah. If someone else is colorblind, then
Yeah.
that's a whole mess. This is blue. No, that's green. Okay, fine.
Yeah, and for them like education is like education taught them like green is red or like green is blue, and
Hmm.
so say they grow up learning like getting educated this topic that this is green, although it's blue, or the other way around.
Yep. And then learning, I suppose, would be, again, if they move somewhere else, and the general kind of consensus would be that no, this is blue. So that thing that you knew is green to be blue, you're just like, so this gets okay. I'm trying not to, but it's just, I love this topic so much. So the only problem there comes in where, if something is a definitive thing, and a group of people are just saying that something's wrong in a wrong way, it begs the question of like, oh, so how do you manage this, right? So okay, if I have this is a watch, believe it or not. So I have a wristwatch, okay, and someone was raised to understand that this is a banana, okay, just for the sake of it, right? Their entire life, they know that this is a banana, and then they come here and they're just like, "Oh, that's a nice banana you have." I'm just like, "This is a watch." And they're like, "No, it's a banana. I've seen those. Like at home, my grandmother has a whole bunch of them. We call them bananas." And I'm like, "Okay, I understand what you're saying, and this is just this is a language kind of augmentation that has happened. So how do you manage it? Do you reject their reality and tell them that you are wrong? This is a watch and that's the end of story. Or you'd be like, hey, at home you may call them bananas, but over here we call them watches. And if you want people to understand what you're talking about, you might need to just call it that, you know.
Yeah.
Um, that's yeah, that's that can span off into very, very many different topics, but I'm going to keep quiet.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. So two examples came to my mind. So these two, there are two words that it gets very complex. So very complicated, or let's say these are two simple words. One is terrific, and second is dope. Okay, so yeah, so for different, if I say this thing is dope, many people will get offended by it. Cause they think this as negatively because dope has a negative meaning as well, but I'm using it as positive. Or whereas people in Australia, so they use dope as a positive affirmation, as well as terrific. So I'm not sure where terrific is used as positive. uh, I guess in UK.
Yeah, in the UK,
Yeah,
terrific is a positive thing. Yeah.
yeah, but in like let's say in Bangladesh, if you say this thing is terrific, and you say what the heck are you talking about, yeah, so
So
that's
over there, like that's a bad thing. Like terrific is
yeah,
like terrible kind of thing.
yeah, that's extremely bad. Yeah,
I'm making a mental note of that because when I go over there, like being British, I'll be like, "Oh, that's terrific." And people will be like, "Oh, what the okay."
like these are the words that are used almost every single day by normal people in different parts of the world, and for them it's true. Like as you said, watch is a band is a band is a watch it. For them it's true, on their side of the world. But when you just come together, no, this is not watch. This is a banana. This thing happens.
It's tricky. It's tricky for
It's
sure.
very
But
tricky.
it's when you're more open minded and more accepting to the fluidity of everything, then life is a little bit easier to kind of just navigate. Because if you have like, this is what I believe in, and this is it, and that's that, and nothing can change, like that's when you get just, there's a lot of problems unnecessarily. Whereas, if you're just like, I have my opinions and my views on things, and this person is saying other things, so I'm just going to listen to them, and I'm probably not going to agree with them, but at least I will have some understanding that at least if I come to someone else who has the same kind of opinion as this other person, maybe I can now communicate a little bit just to at least understand where they're coming from and still kind of have my understanding and, kind of have a nice positive move forwards.
And we have a common ground. Let's see. Yeah,
Exactly. Finding common ground.
yeah. So one thing that came to my mind that I forgot just in a second. That was let me think for 1 second. That was I forgot already. Let's move on.
Don't you hate when that happens? An idea! Oh, poof, and it's gone. Oh no.
That happens all the time.
It does.
Yeah, so that's the perfect thing to say, or that's a perfect idea, and now it's gone in a second. Yeah, but it also
Yep.
came in a second, so you don't remember a bit of it.
That's it. Next time it happens, just be like, "Oh, I've got this thing," and I'll shut up, and you can say it.
No, you're thinking that. So what would you say one tragedy in your life, or one big loss in your life that changed your life?
Ooh, well,
Mm-hmm.
this could easily be another like 90 minutes, but I'll try and keep it as short as I can. And I'm just gonna put this here so people have space to kind of give themselves space if they need to from what I'm about to say, because it's involving death, right? And it's involving family, and it's mostly involving suicide. So there, I've given people space to kind of like, if you don't want to listen to this part, then like skip forwards by about maybe 10 minutes or something. So the most difficult thing I've had to deal with actually happened fairly recently in 2019, where my mother committed suicide, and she lived in the US. So I live in the UK. She lived in the US, and both of us are from Kenya. So geography wise, that's a lot of mileage to kind of cover across three different locations. Um, because it's important, an important detail of my mother passing. She didn't go quietly in the sense of the classic ways that suicide are usually portrayed. She shot herself in the head with a gun that she's had. I have shot that gun at a firing range, not at anybody. Although in America, you can never be too sure. I've shot the gun at a firing range. I know the power of that gun. It's a very powerful gun. I know how hard you have to squeeze the trigger for it to go off. I had to use two fingers. So, a lot of people are just like, yeah, you can like shoot like, no, a lot of guns, you can't actually shoot like that with a lot of guns. So this one you have to use two fingers to shoot it. So for my mom to do that was a very hugely committed action. Um, and I was in the UK. So that happened in May 2019. And even if you mentally prepare, like me and my mother weren't really on good terms anyway. Like we were on very, very shaky ground. And probably about 3 years prior, my grandmother passed away, her mother passed away, and we had a fight, and it was just a whole bunch of crazy drama, but we were kind of slowly but surely making amends. So when this happened, I I had the shock, like the initial shock of learning a family member has passed away, whether it's by suicide or by natural slash unnatural means. It's always going to be a shock. It doesn't matter. I don't care who you are, unless that person has been woefully abusive to you to the point that you've literally disregarded them from your life. In that case, fine. If you're happy that they died, then okay, I understand. But like, if you have even a rocky connection with a family member and you hear of their passing, it shakes you to your core. So having my mother commit suicide, um, I would say it momentarily paralyzed me when I heard it down the phone. Then I heard it from my stepfather's daughter, so my stepsister, who is a year older than my mother, because my stepfather is very old and he already had kids from another marriage, and one of them was older than my mother. It's crazy. Um, but hearing that from her, kind of just completely just everything just stopped. It felt like forever. It probably was maybe like 30 seconds, but like it was mad how it happened. And looking back on that, when these things happen, there's I always think there's maybe two different styles of people when it comes to these situations, especially around death, but especially around suicide bereavement, either from a sibling or a parent or someone very close by. So you either become the spearhead, you become the tip of a spearhead in the next steps going forward. So like you feel your emotions for a second, but then you put it into a square, into a box, and you put it on a shelf because those emotions aren't serving you right now, and there's a lot of stuff that now needs to happen. So you're like, okay, I'm gonna put this away, and I have to go do work. So that's one style of person, and then you have the other style of person who just completely breaks down because they know they have a network of people around them who will look after them, and they will be the collective net that will go forwards and kind of do what needs to be done in that situation. And talking to people and understanding these two styles of people, when you look beyond who they are as a person, it actually kind of makes sense if you look at how they grew up. So I mentioned, I moved to the UK at the age of 15. I was sent to boarding school. I had to fend for myself from a very young age. So I'm very much a tip of a spearhead kind of person. Um, I could never just sit and cry and not do anything about anything because I don't understand that. Like, I'm jealous of people who can sit and feel their emotions, whereas I put them in boxes and put them on the shelf. I'm like, I can't deal with this now. I have work to do. So, dealing with my mother's suicide, that's what I had to do. Is I knew, being the eldest daughter, I had a lot of work ahead of me. And sure enough, I told my uncle, who was his younger sister. I told a couple of other people, and everyone's like, okay, what are you doing next? I'm like, give me 5 minutes. I just need to think of what's going on. So already I knew people were already going to ask me, what are you going to do? Rather than saying, how can I help? Which is interesting because people already put you in that position of you are the head of the spear. So you go do the things as opposed to let me look after you. that's family dynamics. So having to fly 4,000 miles over into America, and I only lived in America when I was 4 years old for like 10 months. So like I don't really know America and their systems, but I learned very quickly. And dealing with having to collect a body, I know that's a very cold thing to say. There is no field manual. There's no, this is how you collect your family member and take them home 101, right? So I kind of played it by ear and I'm just like, okay, what's the next logical step? What's the next logical step? What needs to be done? Just always trying to search. Um, and I figured it out. I got there, I had to go claim the body. I had to go do a death report at police station. Had to go to crematorium to go get her cremated because that was her request. Because I was traveling back to Kenya, I asked about travel documents for ashes. That's a thing. You do need travel documentation for a box of ashes because people, if there's not certain things on the box and not certain certificates with that box, they will assume it's drugs and they'll just open it up. And I don't know about you, but I don't particularly want one of my parents' ashes just to kind of fly around an airport. So, you know, that's the thing. By the way, dark humor is my managing my coping mechanism. I use a lot of dark humor when it comes to death and stuff. So if you find yourself laughing at a few things I'm saying, it's okay. It's deliberate because that's what I'm doing. So yeah, so just figuring out all of these things step by step, like it's just always asking yourself, what's next? What's next? How do I do this? How do I do that? Which encourages your brain to actually do the searching for you. Like subconsciously, there's this, conscious and subconscious existence. And if you give your subconscious permission to actually, go and do the searching for you, then you'll be surprised how much stuff just kind of pops up into your head, and you're just like, oh, I should look for this, or oh, I should look for that, or those kind of things. It does happen, I promise, because that's what happened to me this entire time. So yeah, so the American side of things was really trialing. I was out in the States for a month because I had to go to my mother's apartment and deal with all of that. There's this apartment full of her stuff, which was an emotional nightmare. Sitting on your own in your mother's space where there's memories of you and her everywhere. Um, there's written things here and there, and past presents that she was going to send you, but she forgot to, and just all that kind of stuff. It's really really painful to deal with. But then on the flip side, coming back home to Kenya is quite interesting because I don't know. I know a lot of people in the Western world, funerals and stuff are very sad affairs, right? And they last 1, maybe 2 days. And it's just sad, 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 sad. In Kenya, it's not sad. Like, it is exactly the opposite. And it lasts weeks, depending on how important a person you are. My grandmother's was about 2 weeks. My mom's was about 4 days. But still, um, evenings of dancing, of celebration. People are walking miles, okay? In Kenya, like, you don't just drive over somewhere. People will literally walk for 2 days to come and pay their respects, give their condolences. We feed them. So we have a huge, kind of gathering where people eat food and stuff. And the tribal aspect in Kenya still is very prevalent, even with Christian funerals. So, with the tribe, I let my uncle deal with this because I didn't want to. I'm like, I'm female. Again, these limitations. I'm female, and in Kenya, there's still this kind of weird class system where like females are like second class citizens to men, especially in like tribal spaces. And then we've got the village elders, like I think 13 village elderly men, no women, just men, who kind of have the say over whether they will allow something or disallow something. So I tell my uncle, I'm like, you go deal with that. He's just like, do you not want it? I'm like, I don't even want them to know I exist. Because I don't need them talking to me in Swahili because I can't speak Swahili anymore. I've lost the ability to. I understand it a little bit because that will further undermine the entire conversation. I don't want to be a distraction. Like, you have to go in there and do it. So he did, and it took him 2 weeks to discuss allowing my mother to be buried in the family burial ground. It's like, it's ours, but we still need to get the village elders to approve it. And there's three things that my tribe doesn't agree in, and that is suicide, cremation, and divorce. So my mom was divorced from my father when I was 14, 13. She committed suicide and she got cremated. So my uncle was dealing with a holy trifecta of just like, no, he had to really, really convince them, but he did. And it took 2 weeks. So yeah,
What's
after that, like,
Kumetra? What's
hmm?
Kumetra? Like, what's Kumetra? Like, what's
The what?
Kumetra? That's it. Uh,
What, the tribe that I'm in?
no, that is it. Like, there are three rules that like you
Yeah.
cannot break. One is like suicide, second is divorce, and third is Kumetra.
Oh, cremation.
Oh, cremation. What's
Yeah, so
cremation?
cremation is when a body is burned down into ashes.
Oh.
So yeah, yeah. No, it's cool. Don't worry. Like it's not really a common thing, but yeah, like my mum's last request was to be cremated. An interesting thing with that word is depending on where you are in the world, that word is said slightly differently. So I'm very aware, like the way I say it. I don't even know if it's the British way or the American way, but yeah, there's always like, what are you saying? And I'm like, oh, I'm maybe saying it a bit wrong, but yeah, it's reducing a body down into
Yeah, I got.
ashes. So yeah, so that's, burning of bodies is not a thing that is approved in the tribe that I'm in. They they require whole body to be buried in the ground, which is weird because they bury bodies in concrete boxes. So I'm just like, how about you save yourself the cement? And I put her in a biodegradable urn with a tree plant in it. So then she grows into a tree. Like, that's better. That's feeding the earth rather than like poisoning it with all these cement boxes. But that's another conversation. Um, and yeah, so she got buried, and that was probably the easier side. Just realizing that there's a lot of family, even though I'm miles away from them for so long, there's still family there to support me. So yeah, that was probably the most painful and steepest learning. I wouldn't say education, huge learning curve for me.
It absolutely is, because yeah, as you said, like like if a close family member goes away, even if he or she is not that close, it is painful.
Hmm,
Yeah,
it is.
and the biggest loss is like, let's say, like on our emotional side, because it's, I don't have the best words to describe it, because yeah, I'm not even an emotional person as well, that much.
It's fair. I mean, it happens. Like it there's not really words to explain like the feelings that happen because I don't
Mm,
even think the emotions that come out are so primitive, because as humans, depending on whether you believe in evolution theory or not, we express through movement first, and the words that we're using to communicate came way later,
mm,
so the kind of like, if someone tells you something and you get this kind of weird, just like very instant feeling of movement that just comes out of your body, like to the point where you're sweating and your heart rate goes up, and you're breathing really really fast, like that will happen way before words come out of your mouth, and if you can't put words to that, that's totally fine, because there's a lot of things that we do that don't have words. All we do is describe what our body is doing. If you're scared, right? We have scared, we're shaking. But shaking can also mean cold. Shaking can also mean tired. Shaking can mean hungry. Some of those emotions and some of those are states. So it's, yeah, the kind of trying to describe emotions, I think, I realize people try to do it a lot, but at the same time, I'm like, nah, just, it's a feeling. Like, emotions are mostly feelings, and that's totally fine.
yeah, absolutely. Emotion, like what's the difference between emotion and feelings? Like that's the same thing, isn't it?
They're Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a very, very, very small nuance kind of difference between emotions and feelings. Um, and I think it does kind of, I mean, when you say it, I am feeling this, I am feeling that, I'm feeling angry, versus I am angry. If I say I'm angry, the embodiment is maybe I'm sweating a little bit, maybe I'm shaking a little bit, maybe my skin color's changed a little bit. My ability to speak words is limited because my primal brain is going must do whatever because of anger. um, so I am angry versus I'm feeling angry could be a descriptor of like I'm observing these physical traits that are happening and I am associating that with a feeling of what anger would be, to try and it's like I agree with you. It's kind of the same, but there's just such a tiny thing that just pulls it apart to be different. Um, um, but yeah, it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, and uh, like today, like it's very unfortunate that we have to limit the time because
Yeah.
yeah, it's getting very long and yeah, like yeah, this is a very interesting topic we are talking about. Like very diverse. Each topic we can go like for 90 minutes or like more than that on each topic. But we have to limit it. 'Cause,
We got to stop somewhere. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So before you go, so any last words that you want to share?
Yeah, just for people out there, like it's really important to be brave to fail. Whatever you're doing, whether you're kind of doing education things and studying, or you've got a job and you're going through that. Whatever you're doing, it's important to be okay with failing because you only grow when you fail. If you just focus on succeeding all the time, then you kind of get stuck and you become very, very safe and very confined in that space of success. And you only grow when you fail. You won't die as long as you're doing stuff that is safe. Like you kind of you check what you're doing is relatively safe. You look at like, if I fail, what will happen? Oh, you didn't get that job. Okay, cool. Or the business didn't work out. Okay, cool. So you can go do something else. Don't kind of start planning things like, oh, if I step off this ledge, we're like, no, no, don't do that. Okay, don't step off ledges that are dangerous. Just kind of assess, do a risk assessment. um, yeah, I think that's the most important thing to do because we only have one life to live, for the most part, and it's really, really important that we do stuff that we want to try and do, because no one gets out of this alive. No one lives forever.
Absolutely. And we have to try to stay on the positive side. Yeah, we'll there will be negativity, and we have to try to be as patient and positive as we can.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. So where can our listeners find you, online or offline?
So online, there's a few places. If you, I actually talk about the subjects that we've spoken about today in my own podcast show. It's called Getting Shiggy With. So my name is Shiggy, Shiggi. So Getting Shiggy With. And the episodes are anywhere from half an hour to maybe an hour and a half long, depending on what they are. And you can find me anywhere: iTunes, Spotify, Google, Amazon, wherever. Just put, Getting Shiggy With, and I'll pop up. If you want a central space for all of the things that I do, shiggy.co.uk is my personal kind of just space on the internet where I just post stuff up. If you want to find me on Instagram, I'm Shig. So you just put ELSHIG into the search, and the first one that pops up. Same on Twitter, exactly the same handle on Twitter. And if you want to like look into the business stuff that I do, audiofy.me. So not audiofy.com, that's a different company that does a similar thing to me. But audiofy.me, so audiofy.me, is where I have my business, and I do audio production of audiobooks and podcasts. and we do some experimental stuff with voice AI and audio social networks as well.
Yeah, amazing. Uh, yeah, so that's the inner end of our conversation, and so I'm very like happy to have you as my guest, and
Thank you.
yeah, so I'm very sure like people got value out of it because I don't know why I use value so much like, and on every at the end of every podcast I don't know like this is the thing like people got value out of it, but yeah. uh yeah, so what did you say to like after our conversation, what the people get?
I'd like to think a couple of summarizing things from our conversation is, technology is expanding a lot globally, and you don't need to have a lot of high tech stuff to get started. If you want to do something that's more about like what you want to do moving forwards, education systems, you need to start asking questions. I'm not even going to go into that because we'll end up here being here for like another like 2 hours. The education system, just look at it and just be like, is this where I want to go? Is this where I want my child to go? Like, is what is going forwards? Look further ahead by at least 5-10 years, and just be like, is this going to work? When it comes to family members, like if you're the tip of the spear, or whether you're one of the people that needs to be kind of collected by other people to move forwards, that's fine. And it's really, really important to realize you're not an island, right? Regardless of where you are, who you are, what you're doing, even if you're 5,000 miles away from the rest of your family for 20 years, you're still not an island. Um, and yeah, there's cultural differences around the world, and it's really, really important just to be patient and have the ability to have common ground with everybody. I think that's everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So to summarize it in three sentences, I'd say, so I'm pretty sure people will get proper direction about uh, what could like to know what to know that the to ask the right questions, and let's say that cultural differences, and you're not on an island because there are people and who are amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm pretty sure people got understood this these things, and yeah, again thanks again for coming on the show, and thanks for the listener who listened to this, and that's how you end it.